Everybody, just before we get started with the show here, I want to make a quick shout out to the good folks at Springs Homes for supporting Studio 809 and this podcast. They're in the business of real estate because they love helping clients achieve their goals. Competitive, collaborative, and trustworthy. Meet the real estate pros at springshomes.com.
This is Studio 809.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone. You can find me on my website, hikingbob.com, with links to, well, everything. Social media, columns at The Independent, the other podcasts, my newsletter, my books, my photography website, anything you want, hikingbob.com. And you can also contact me there if you have a question, comment, suggestion, or if you'd like to sign up for my newsletter. All that stuff is right there at hikingbob.com. Today with me is my co-host and the guy who hijacked my podcast last week, Wild Westendorf.
Hey everyone, it's Wild Westendorf here, and you can find me on my website, wildwestendorf.com, and on social media at Wild Westendorf.
Well, and Kevin, you hijacked the podcast last week with this, which was episode number 300.
Yep.
So first, I'd like to thank everybody who's been a listener, whether you've listened to all 300 or not, and all of them are still available. Some may be a little dated because they're kind of topical, but if you're looking for a history on a certain topic, go through it and look at them. But you and Cole the dog, and we'll let the cat out of the bag a little bit, our friend Rich Gustafson was nice enough to accept my offer or my request for him to play the part of Cole the dog.
Yeah,
because we know dogs can't talk, and if that's a surprise to you, well, I'm really sorry. And it was a lot of fun, and you guys did a great job with that. It was a lot of fun. It was a short one, but as brainstormed this, and it was my wife's idea actually to do something because I was thinking,
that's right. Yeah,
I think it's 300 is coming up. That's a milepost. That's a landmark or whatever you want to call it. Let's do something special. She goes, interview the dog, and I'm looking at the dog. Go, he's dumb, right? He's a sweetie and he's a good dog, but he's kind of dumb. But it turned out great. So you guys did a great job with that. Just a complete bang up job.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate it. And I appreciate all the listeners, all the people who have been on the podcast. A number of people have been on a number of times. We try to have repeat guests, every once in a while who are, involved in outdoor recreation. Of course, Kevin, I thank you for being on many, 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 many of these podcasts. And you're gracious enough to stop by here at the studio, so to speak, which is my kitchen. And or on Zoom or whatever, and sometimes we have to make last-minute changes, so I really appreciate that. And, somebody says, that's about 6 years. Well, it's 52 weeks in a year, so the 6-year point is 12 more episodes, 11 after this, down the road. So a couple more months down the road, we hit 6 years. But, damn.
Yeah, it's been a ride, and I remember joining the podcast shortly after you started it, and I want to say late summer of 2016. That's
about right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, because I had already, before I started airing these, I had 6 already recorded. And in the meantime, I had asked you to be on the podcast, and I'm so glad that you did. So it's been a fun ride. So it's 300 straight weeks. Not just 300 episodes, it's 300 straight weeks of doing podcasts. So even some of your big, big podcasts that are out there have not done.
Oh, no.
And it's without reruns. So some of those that have done consecutive weeks have reruns or stuff like that. We have not done that. And how long can I keep doing this? Beats me. Some days I'm like, oh boy. But there's always something to talk about. It's outdoor rec.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like my column at the Indy. There's always something about outdoor rec to write about.
Exactly.
There's something going on all the time. So it's been great. I was gone for a couple months down in Phoenix, so I wasn't far away, and we were still able to do podcasts. And then last week before, what week was that? I was away on a trip with the National Geographic, and we took a ship from, we started in Portland and ended up in the place of Lewiston, Idaho, which is on the other side, the east side of the Columbia River. I should say, the Columbia River keeps going, but that's where we stopped. And through the Columbia River Gorge with side trips on the Hood River, the Palouse River, the Snake River.
Oh, wow.
We did a thing on what's called a jet boat down the Snake River. And a jet boat has 3 450 cubic inch Ford pickup truck Raptor engines.
Oh, that's a beast.
It's a beast. And what it does is the Snake River is very shallow. So it basically works like a giant jet ski. But it's a boat that sits like 40 people.
Yeah.
And it just skims over the top. It just sucks water in one side and out the back. And we were screaming down the...
I bet that was a blast.
down the Snake River, like, ah! To a place called Hell's Canyon, which after that I was like, whoa. But the stuff we got to see was tremendous. The people on board were great. The other people who were taking the cruise with me were wonderful. We had a great time. I came back with some great pictures.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, you've seen, if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you've seen the pictures. And it was a fun trip.
Good.
I got another one scheduled with them in September. I can't wait to go on that. And then after that, I'm kind of no trip planned for next year. At least nothing that with Nat Geo or anything like that. But I've got a couple things in mind. May not be with Nat Geo. I think next year I'm going to shift to more land-based and more activity type thing. So we'll see what happens with that. But in any case, thanks everybody for being here for so many years. Our patrons at Patreon, I can't thank you people enough for supporting the podcast, helping pay the bills. And if you'd like to help support this podcast and also be rewarded for doing that, patreon.com/hikingbob. You can get all the details there, and there's rewards. If none of those rewards are exactly what you're looking for, tell me, and I'll craft something more to your liking, and that's appropriate for the patronage you're looking for. So thanks everybody for that, and it's been fun. Kevin, you did a couple of hikes over the weekend, some small stuff around town here.
Yep, I went to U Valley Park, which is a place that I forget about just because it's kind of out of the way for me, and it's still a gem of a park though. I mean, it's a great place to go for an easy chill hike. You can loop together a bunch of trails to do like one big one, or you can do a small quick one. And then I also hiked from my place to White Acres Open Space, which is a very small area that's kind of sandwiched between Red Rock Canyon Open Space and the Section 16 Trail. And then I went up there and then came back down through Bear Creek Canyon. So yeah, just a very chill weekend.
Cool. Yeah, White Acres is kind of like that southeast corner of Red Rock Canyon Open Space before it butts up into Section 16 in the U.S. Forest Service land.
Yep.
And it's some nice spots in there, some nice ridge lines in there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. In my column last week in the Indy, I talked about how Rocky Mountain National Park is increasing their daily fee again to get in. And they have a timed entry system which goes into effect the end of this month. The rate increase goes into effect. And most national parks, well, let's start off with the fact that not all national parks and monuments have an entry fee.
Correct, yeah.
You and I have been to Capitol Reef.
Yeah.
Which does not have an entry fee. At least when I was there, it didn't. I don't think it still does.
And I was there last summer, too. And
yeah.
It's still free.
Some of them can get by with whatever is doled out through, federal, tax money, or, when they collect those fees, they divide them up, and then they go back out, things like that. So they don't have it. So not all National Park Service sites have an entry fee. Many do, especially the bigger ones. And you could argue that they have so many visitors, their costs are higher, they need to charge a fee. Okay. So most of them, when you pay the fee, anywhere between $25 and $35 or even more in some place, I think, it's usually good for a week.
Yeah.
And that kind of gets lost on people because a lot of times when you pay a fee, like you go to our state parks here in Colorado, you pay a modest fee, but it's for the day, 24 hours. And the nice thing with that, though, is it's good at any park. So if you start off your day paying the fee to go hiking in Cheyenne Mountain State Park, then you decide you want to go for a hike in Castlewood Canyon, you hang on to that pass, and you can get into Castlewood Canyon. It's good at any of the parks.
I did not know about that. Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. But Rocky Mountain National Park has a daily fee, a weekly fee, and a yearly pass. Not that we haven't made things complicated enough as it is.
Yeah.
So their daily fee is going from $25 to $30 for a day. But you can get a weekly one for $35.
Oh, okay.
So why would you get a daily one? Because things change. You may decide, I'm going to go up there for a day, and then you say, I want to come back tomorrow. Well, if you bought a daily one, now you're paying that again. So you buy I would buy the $35 one just in case I want to come back tomorrow or 3 days from now or something like that. And then as I thought about it more, and as I talked about in the column, and I'll have a link to it, people go back into more detail, they want like $70 for a yearly pass that's only good at Rocky Mountain National Park. Okay. But why buy that when for $80 you can buy one that's good anywhere?
Yep.
Any National Park Service site and other sites that charge a fee. If it's a BLM site that charges a fee, or Forest Service site that charges a fee, Bureau of Reclamation, Army Corps of Engineers site, then why not get that pass? But here's and there's actually a reason behind it. If they charge you a fee there at the gate to go into their park, that park keeps 80% of that revenue.
Okay.
They have to give 20% of it back, and then the Park Service doles it out to the other parks. So if you buy an America the Beautiful pass, which is the yearly one, that doesn't quite work that way. And okay, I kind of get that, but as a consumer, I don't care. I'm trying to get the best bang for my buck. So yeah, I can get a $70 pass to go to your park, but for $80 I can get a pass to go anywhere. That seems like a no-brainer. But here's the bigger issue, and this has been talked about a lot. And you sent me a newspaper article that kind of talked about this, and I'll let you talk about. I'll have you talk about that in a second because it was a great article. Is that when we come to our national parks and our state parks, not to the same degree, and we'll talk about how the state parks are kind of remedying things. Are we pricing a certain part of our society out of being able to go to these parks? Are we making it so expensive that people who pay their taxes, which do support our national parks, they're not entirely revenue or fee driven like our state parks here in Colorado are, which we rely solely on fees. Are we keeping a segment of our society that pays taxes from actually being able to afford to go to these parks? And by use of a timed entry system where you have to plan your vacation months in advance.
Yeah.
For people who are working day to day and paycheck to paycheck, and they may not be able to know when they're going to get a day off until the day they have a day off. Are we pricing and systematically keeping a segment of our society from going out and enjoying the parks that they're paying their taxes? We're talking about national parks here. Our tax support. City parks in Colorado Springs, no fees. County parks in El Paso County, no fees. There are fees if you want to have events, but if you want to go to a park and hike and enjoy the outdoors and have a picnic or something like that, you don't have to pay. Your taxes support that, and kind of the way it should be, I think. If you want to go have a big birthday party, you have to pay a fee because there's extra expenses involved. I get that. I think everybody would understand that. I don't think anybody expects that to happen for free. So, Kevin, talk about the article you sent me. It was from the Billings Gazette, I believe, in Montana, about how the timed entry system is kind of hurting a segment of our population.
Well, so what this article is discussing mainly is how our current system that a lot of parks use is a reservation system, and they tend to be released on a schedule, and you tend to have you have to be on your computer or smartphone. The second it's released, it's very easy for someone with a faster connection to get their permits early or first, or you could be at your job or busy. You could be a parent and you got kids to worry about. And so it was discussing how a lot of these permit systems, I understand why we need them now, but that it's more fair to have a lottery rather than a timed entry, like first come, first serve system, when some people may have more money and more flexibility to get a ticket or a reservation first, and how the lottery, while it's still it's really hard to plan because you may or may not get a pass, it's much more fair because it's random. And if you remember a few episodes back, I discussed how me and a couple of friends won a permit to hike Mount Whitney, which was it's done on a lottery system, and we feel very, very lucky and grateful that we won them. But it wouldn't be fair if my friends had like a top of the line computer with high speed internet when someone else who also wants to go really bad can't. They have to wait till they get off work, et cetera, et cetera.
So you're talking about the difference between you put your name in a hat ahead of time,
yeah,
and then a specific date. I just want to make sure people understand the difference what we're talking about here. So in the lottery, you put your name in, you send in a $2 fee or whatever.
Yeah,
I think there's a fee involved, and you say, for these 4 days, we'd like to have a permit to go hiking on Mount Whitney.
Yeah,
everybody puts their name in, then they're randomly drawn. So you don't have to be Johnny on the spot the minute it opens up and hit a button and hope that you get it with, like you said, a high-speed connection. This is not, and there's still the timed entry thing, but what you're talking about is the method on how you get your permit. Okay, cool. And
with the timed entry thing, I think that goes back to why we have to have a reservation thing in the first place, because the parks are getting extremely crowded, especially the larger ones, especially Rocky Mountain, because it's not a bad drive from Denver, so it gets a massive amount of traffic. Same with Zion, and I know I believe the same thing in Yellowstone, a lot of other parks too. I also think we're also in the growing pains phase of our parks now, because the parks are getting so popular, well known, thanks to social media. A lot of people see these photos on Instagram and Facebook, and they're like, "Oh wow, I want to go out there." And I hope eventually we can come up with a better system in place after we've had a few years of these in place. And I think the frustrating part is the rising cost to get into the parks, especially since we tend to have what feels like unlimited money for other things, but then when it comes to the parks, we're just like, I don't know about that. When I feel like we should make the parks, I wish we could make all the parks free and fully supported by our tax dollars, so that people of lower income, with more restricted time available, can actually take advantage of this. Because it's not just the cost of the parks, but it's the cost to get there in the first place, and finding a place to camp or a nearby town to stay overnight. So it's just getting more and more expensive, especially at a place like Rocky Mountain, when their cheapest fee is still, it's good for 1 day, and that's it.
And it's only and I was kind of talking about how you can get the daily fee for $30, which goes into effect, how's this for a coincidence? Right in time for Memorial Day when things pick up. And for $5 more, you can get a weekly pass, but it's still $35.
Yeah.
And if you're a family and you live here in Colorado Springs and you want to go to Rocky Mountain National Park, you need a timed entry. Now, you don't need a timed entry all year. Let's make that clear. Basically, it runs from Memorial Day to about the middle of October. And if you get there super early in the morning or later in the evening, you don't need a pass. You don't need a timed entry. I'm sorry. You can get in there, but it's got to be really early in the morning or later in the evening, which, of course, you get there early enough in the morning, you have all day. I get it. Get there in the evening, you got a certain amount of time before it gets dark or something like that. But if you're a family and you've got young kids and you need to be at Rocky before the timed entry thing kicks in, well, good luck dragging all your kids out of bed and going up there. So it just strikes me that when you have people they may be working a couple of jobs and they're providing for their family and get a day off and it's a nice day and they want to take kids, and I've talked about how we've kind of lost spontaneity, they don't necessarily have the ability to know 2 months, 3 months, 6 months down the road what days off they're going to have. So they are almost effectively locked out of the system. Now, there are a certain number of passes that are available the night before, but guess what? They're not a lottery.
Yep.
So there we go back to what you were talking about technology, and not everybody has the money to have, super high-speed internet or the fanciest phones that have the fastest processor and 5G connections to be able to connect us. Or they may live in an area where the cell phone service is kind of not so great. There's got to be a better way. Now, ideally, you're right. These would be more tax-supported, but as we know, there's lobbying and politics and stuff. And there's a reason why they say two things people should never see made: sausage and laws. Neither one of them is very pretty. And there are other priorities. We have to provide for defense. We have to provide for public safety. We have to provide for infrastructure. And as we've seen here, even locally, when we had the last recession, what took a beating? The park systems took a beating because revenue went down, and you still needed police and fire, and you needed to pave the roads. Although in Colorado Springs, we didn't do a very good job of that until under the mayor that was in at that time. So things like parks and recreation kind of take a beating. Okay, as an ex-public safety person myself, I kind of get it. Yeah. Those fire trucks need to keep running. I still had to go to work and put out fires and respond to your car crashes and all that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, the National Park Service doesn't get enough money from taxes to fund itself, so it's got to charge fees. Those fees keep escalating because our lawmakers, although recently things have changed, and I will give them credit, they have amped up the money going into catching up with the backlog. But it's been so far behind that the parks have had to increase their rates just to be able to take care of themselves locally, which is why Rocky is charging $30 a day or $35 a week for you to get in there, and they're not the only ones. It's and I'm not, and I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that they're trying to lock out a group of people on purpose.
Oh, yeah.
These park managers, in the National Park Service, their superintendents, are stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Exactly.
They have infrastructure that's failing. They have increased usage, which is damaging their infrastructure. And their parent agency, which eventually is the Department of the Interior, isn't giving them enough money to fix everything. Manpower, equipment, vehicles, roads, blah, 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 blah. You name it, it's happening. So where's the money going to come from? Well, let's put a toll booth up at the entrance and let's just start charging fees. Then we just start charging fees. It gets easier and easier to start raising the fees and everything. But you have to wonder about the people who are trying to get into the parks and can't afford it.
Yep.
And I don't think it's fair to... Now, Colorado Parks and Wildlife runs our state parks. They are not taxpayer supported. They have over the last couple of years gotten a bundle of tax money that's gone to specific things. They got a bunch of tax money to get Fisher's Peak State Park developed quickly. Because the states had a little bit of extra money. But day-to-day operations is still funded by fees. So it went from $7, $8 to $9. Some parks are $10 a day to go in. You can get a state parks pass. What's they run about $80, I think, right now. So that's not necessarily cheap for families. Now, what they're doing is we've talked about the great Keep Colorado Wild Pass.
Yeah.
Is now that annual fee is going to go down to $29. And the governor hopes to get it down even further by adding it to your vehicle registration. Hopefully more people keep it than don't keep it because you can opt out of it. And so that's a positive step to make it less expensive for people to come and enjoy their state parks. I think that's a good step.
Yeah.
I worry about people who are just not able to go. And some years ago, when I was with the Friends of Cheyenne Canyon, and we were dealing with traffic.
Oh yeah.
Long before everything that's happened, the uptick we've had in the last couple of years, and there was a discussion about, well, maybe we can charge for parking. Well,
yep.
There was a couple of reasons why I thought you couldn't do that. A was there's a deed that says you can't charge an admittance fee, and if you charge for parking, then that's an admittance fee. You may not have a toll booth at the gate, but you have a parking meter, and you can't park without paying. That's an admission fee. But the other part is I said, we're going to take away one of the last places that people can go to without having to pay anything.
And I think we're extremely blessed to live in a city with parks like Palmer Park, Youth Valley, like I mentioned earlier, Cheyenne Canyon, and so on and so forth. I've shared this story before, but at my last job, years and years back, I had a coworker who was making minimum wage, and he was complaining about how it was getting harder and harder to find things to do with his kids that didn't cost an arm and a leg, especially if you try and take a family out to go see a movie or something. I mean, you're going to spend $50 easily. You know, it depends on how many kids you have, plus like popcorn and drinks. And
try taking a family of 4 to a Rockies game.
Ooh,
hundreds of dollars.
Oh yeah. And I told him, like, well, actually, you can take your kids up to Cheyenne Canyon. There's a lot of places to park along the bottom there, and your kids can go and play in the creek. You don't necessarily have to go hiking, but you can find a place to like sit down. You can have a picnic, and it's free. And he came back to me the Monday after that, and she said like thank you. I had no idea about this place. I didn't know it was free. I'm surprised it's free. And my kids had a blast, and we were there all day, and then they slept really, really good that night. So like it gave me some peace and quiet, and I would hate to see that go.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear, there is no admission fee into this in our city parks. They did not implement a pay to park in North Cheyenne Canyon. It's still free to go. It still has traffic issues. The way they're handling that basically is by closing the gates when it gets full. You know, everybody's been in North Cheyenne Canyon knows it's a narrow, small canyon, and there's only so much room, and you can't make a canyon wider. You just can't do it. We do have time reservation going in one of the state parks. I think the CPW commission is going to vote on that at their next meeting.
Oh, okay.
Which I think is next week, and they'll more than likely approve it. I know some news media said it was already in effect. They're wrong, but it's gonna more than likely to go into effect. But it's a very narrow one. It's only certain days and only during certain months. I mean, they're really tightening it down a little bit. They don't want to make it universal. They don't want to take the spontaneity out of it. And theirs is driven, again, not by cost, but by traffic. And it's El Dorado Canyon, which is as narrow as Cheyenne Canyon. And it's very popular. And there's, I think, less parking there than there is in Cheyenne Canyon. It's very tiny. So they're doing it for traffic purposes. And I think most people can understand that. It's just, you know, it pains me to see these things being done that are keeping people. I have the luxury of being retired, and I can basically go wherever I want, whenever I want. I recognize that I am lucky to have that. I recognize that that's a luxury that most people who want to visit our parks do not have. They should be able to have, at least on their schedule, to be able to go to a park whenever they want. And it bothers me that they can't, because they either don't have the financial means to pay $35 to go to a national park after having paid their taxes and dutifully, you know, or they are working so hard that they can't schedule 3 months out when they want to go to a park. And that's what bothers me the most about this equity, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. As a matter of fact, in Colorado, they now have a board that is working on making sure that groups that are I don't want to say disenfranchised, because to me that's more of an intentional thing, but groups that typically have not been big users of the park, to get them out into the parks.
Yeah.
This is at the state level. That is a positive step. To keep Colorado Wild Pass, where instead of being $80 a year, it's $29 and maybe goes lower. That's a positive step. Our city and county parks, which have maintained free admission, there's no gatekeeper to take money from you at the park because you pay your taxes, is a positive step that, man, I hope that keeps up. Now, there's some parks in Colorado Springs where that will have to stay that way, because when those lands were given to the city, one of the prerequisites was they will remain free. That should stay in effect. And I don't fault the superintendent so much, because they're stuck in those national parks. But, man, it just bothers me.
Yeah.
And I don't like time reservation systems, and I'll say that I also understand how we got there, and I don't like them. But I understand why they're there. And they're there for a reason, but I don't like them. These are the things that kind of, you know, it's
frustrating.
It is very frustrating.
And there's no easy answer or a solution. I mean, because I do love waking up and like, hey, I'm going to go to this park and such without having to plan it ahead like weeks in advance. I'm lucky too. I've got a Monday through Friday job. It's stable. It's the same hours every day. I have plenty of vacation time to use. Like it's great, but a lot of people just don't have that freedom, and it's not a solution. But it's definitely something that I would encourage all of you to do, is to do more research on what else is out there instead of just going to Rocky Mountain. Now, Rocky Mountain is a beautiful place. It's stunning. The hikes I've done up there, just incredible. But there's a lot of other hikes to do that are all across the state that you're going to get a similar experience with, in terms of like the high alpine lakes and rivers and creeks, wildlife and such too. Yeah, it's not Rocky Mountain, but you can still have an incredible experience across the entire state.
Exactly, but on the other hand, people who want to go to Rocky Mountain to experience that should be able to go.
Yeah.
I mean, correct. You're right. There's a lot of places you can go to see a lot of similar sites. But people say, well, that's the national park. These national parks, as you talk about, are our best idea.
Yeah.
They should get to experience that, and it's tough for them to do that. So I wish we had better ways. I don't have all the answers. There are people a whole lot smarter than me trying to struggle with these things. But I think that once you start, we'll just charge a fee at the gate. Then it just becomes easier and easier to charge fees at the gate. My message to land managers is keep your eye on who's not able to go to these parks. Keep an eye on who doesn't get to go. Keep an eye on what groups you don't see.
I'm glad we are lucky enough here to have the parks that we do that are free, so that these kids and families can go out there and experience them and have fun.
And I want to make it clear, too, that we talked about the recession when we really cut it. When COVID hit and things were shutting down and we knew that sales tax revenue was probably going to drop like a rock, I'll give our local government, elected officials in the city and county here, instead of just slashing parks, they took a more measured approach and cut everybody by a few percent and took a graduate approach. Their basic idea was, we're going to cut maybe 10% from everybody.
Yeah.
And so everybody was in the same boat. And then they said, well, we'll keep an eye on things, and if we have to keep cutting, we're going to... So they didn't just say, parks, you're out 40% of your thing, and everybody else gets to keep all their money. Now, that's a tricky thing to do, and I'm not taking anything away. They're struggling to figure out how to do things. But I like that they took a more measured approach than they did in the recession, which it was like, well, parks, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And we're going to knock out most of your... And we're, and so today, we're recording this on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
Here's this great news release that came out from the city of Colorado Springs. One of the things we talked about is parks and there's youth sports. Now, youth sports, if you have a kid who's in sports, it is not cheap.
Oh, yeah.
There are fees to sign up for the team. There's equipment to have to buy. It is expensive to have your kid play sports. So what happened today was the city got a grant from the Daniels Fund and the Dakota Foundation, $225,000 from the Daniels Fund and $50,000 from the Dakota Foundation, plus more money, additional funding, donations from Boeing, the Chapman Foundation, Children's Hospital Colorado, Comcast, the Gazette Charities Foundation, the Shuck Foundation, that they are now going to be able to fund sports for kids who are not going to have to pay for it. So these are going to be, so for example, this coming fall, the $78 fee to play soccer will be waived for the first 460 kids to register at parks citywide from pre-K to fourth grade.
Oh, that's awesome.
So the youngest kids, who more than likely have the youngest parents, who more than likely are not the top of their wage scale for the job they're at, because is when you start out, you're making lower wages than you do as you stay at a job longer and longer.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to now participate where they may have been locked out because of what it costs to do that. I think this is a wonderful idea.
Oh, it's amazing.
And I want to make it clear, and I'll include a link to my column at the Indy last week when I talked about this, that there are some things that the National Park Service does do. There are a handful of free days where you can go to national parks for free, assuming, of course, you're off those days. There is a thing for fourth graders that they can get a pass that's good for this fourth grade school year where they get to go to parks for free. And there are things for disabled people, handicapped people can get a free pass. And if you're military, you get a free pass. Those are out there. But let's not forget, that's probably a small, and I don't know the number, and there's no numbers that I could find, a small percentage of the overall population that is still probably not able to either afford the cost to go or be able to schedule so far out because they're working several jobs, which is still a sizable amount of our population. So I don't want to throw the National Park Service completely under the bus, but let's not also forget some of those things they were told to do by Congress.
Yeah.
So they didn't come up with this stuff on their own. They were told to do this stuff. And so what happens when you tell somebody you got to give away more free passes? Somebody's got to pay for it.
Yep.
And then you have rate increases at the gate. So, I'm not going to throw them under the bus. I'm not throwing park superintendents under the bus. They're being told to keep their parks going, and they're not given more money to do it. So they have to do something. I get it. But, system-wide, I would like to see a better effort done to find a way to get people who can't afford those fees into these parks so that everybody gets to enjoy them to some degree.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a way to do it. People smarter than me have figured out a whole lot of things, a whole lot harder than this. They can figure this stuff out. And that's kind of where I'm at with this. So, Kevin, any thoughts before we...
I think we're both on the same page.
And I think we'll find that most people listening to the show are going to be on the same page. I understand pay to play, which is what they call this, that not everybody should have to pay for things they don't use, but for crying out loud, these things benefit everybody. When you have kids who get to go outside and are not stuck in their house watching TV, they're better off. If they're better off, everybody's better off. Their mental health is better. Their overall health is better.
Yep.
The more we get people out in the outdoors, the better off everybody is. So let's find a way to get more people into the outdoors. Let's be creative. This idea here the city came up with was we got a little funding from here, we got a little funding from there, we got a little bit from this, we got these donations. If this is what it takes to get more people in their national parks and not paying $35 a day or a week to go in there, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And I don't see it. I don't see the federal government stepping up.
Oh, no.
I see the state government here in Colorado stepping up. I see the city government stepping up. The county's doing a great job. I don't see the feds doing the same thing.
And it's frustrating. It's really, really frustrating.
In the meantime, you got the Forest Service here that has 2 law enforcement agencies, officers for the entire Pike Ranger District. Ridiculous. It's stupid. But can they get more? No, because nobody wants to give them the money. These things are dumb. And it's our politicians. Again, speaking very broadly here. If you have your favorite politician, don't send me a letter saying, well, he did this. I'm speaking very broadly here. Just not doing their jobs as well as they probably could be. And maybe instead of, I'm not going to use the phrase I was going to use, arguing over things that happened a couple of years ago that are not going to change anything, how about let's focus on fixing some things?
Yeah.
Instead of, just trying to see who can make somebody else's life as miserable as they want to. And I'm not speaking any political party here. They're all guilty.
Yep.
You're all crapping on your job. You're not doing it. And meanwhile, people who are paying their taxes and supporting you being in Washington or wherever the heck you are, they would like to see something come out of this. And to be honest with you, they're not seeing squat.
Yep.
I think I'm done. Kevin, what the heck? Spring is kind of here.
Yeah, things are starting to blossom.
Yep, things are turning. I'm looking at buds on my trees out here, which I planted, and the one that's been back here for several years and getting bigger and bigger. Flowers were blooming in Phoenix. Unfortunately, down there it was too damn hot. We've already had 100-degree days down there, and it was time to come back. A little bit of extra shock coming back here, and all of a sudden it's hot, and then it's cold, and then it's like, well, what the heck? It's May, for crying out loud. But it is what it is. I'm looking forward to a long, enjoyable summer. I have a lot of things already in the works.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
Wildflower classes, photography classes coming up. So keep an eye out for those. I'll be announcing those as they come up. More stuff coming. So Keep an eye out there. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun summer.
Yeah.
We're getting out from under COVID, I hope. Getting out from under that. And I think we all need to go out and have a good time. And let's help our neighbors out. If you can help them get to a park or something, maybe that's the solution. We need to just help our neighbors out.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Maybe we need to do that. All right. Well, Kevin, you got anything else?
No, I'm sick and tired of this wind, so I hope this summer means we get a lot less of it.
Yeah, when did we become Kansas?
Yeah.
Jeez, it's like Kansas here. The wind is blowing all the time. There's an old joke, and I'm going to hear from somebody in Kansas. They say the wind doesn't blow in Kansas. It sucks. But in any case, if you're from Kansas, I'm kidding. Don't send me a letter. Send it to Kevin. Sorry, Kevin. I just threw you under the bus. No. All right. Well, everybody, with that, I think we'll say goodbye before we get ourselves in any more trouble. So thanks for listening to the Outdoor Hiking Bob podcast.
We'll talk to you later.
See you, everybody.
Before you go, did you know you can rate and review our Studio 809 podcasts? That will help us because our egos really need to have thousands and thousands of listeners. But that helps our wonderful sponsors reach more ears too. And we do love our sponsors. So just go to Studio 809 or any individual 809 podcast in your iTunes or podcast app and click on ratings and reviews. Thanks.